Welcome to Andy's Garage. I'm Andy Phillips. Today I'm going to show you how to diagnose a bad or failing fuel pump in your vehicle. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I have here is a couple things I just wanted to kind of go over. This right here is your fuel pump assembly, and basically what it is, it consists of your little gauge here for your fuel level. It's got the strainer on it. You have your fuel pressure and fuel filter component here on the side of it, and this goes right into your gas tank. Everything's contained. What's inside of it is this right here. This is your fuel pump. Now some vehicles, instead of having this, you'll have what's called a fuel sending unit, which is similar to this, but it's a little more open. But for the most part, it's pretty much all the same. So what this does is this goes into your gas tank. This one here is a side mount, so then this kind of lays into the bottom of the gas tank, and then from there it brings up through the strainer into the fuel pump is where it sucks the fuel through, and then it sends it through right here, the fuel filter pressure regulator right here through the fuel line up to the fuel rail and then to the fuel injectors, and that's how it pulls the fuel through. So it's very important with these that they're functioning properly, even if they're working, but if they're weak and you're not getting the required fuel pressure for your vehicle, you're going to have issues, and that's what we're going to talk about also in this video. Now there's a couple things that can kind of start to go wrong with your fuel pump that can kind of give you the warning signs that you need to replace that. If it goes completely bad, then you're in a situation where it's not working at all. Your car is going to stall out and not going to start, things like that. But sometimes if it's only the pressure that's starting to get weaker, you can have random misfires. You will also be getting a service engine soon or check engine light. So you want to make sure that you check that and find out what it's telling you. If you want to see how to do that, I have a couple videos that I'll have down in the description showing you how to kind of check your OBD2 sensor and different Bluetooth scan tools that you can do product reviews on. But if you see that, you want to check that, and a lot of times if it is your fuel pump, you'll be getting a random misfire. You can also have very rough idle from your engine, which we're going to show you that. You're also going to have maybe some smoke coming out of the engine, and a lot of these symptoms are similar with other components of the fuel system, whether it be the fuel pressure regulator. Sometimes if you have bad fuel injectors, you can get that as well, the fuel filter. So it's really important that you properly diagnose the components, because the fuel pump itself is probably your biggest project, because you need to drop the fuel tank and all that stuff. So you want to kind of work your way through. You also have a relay switch, which also controls this as well. Sometimes they can go bad and you can think the fuel pump's not working when really it's just the relay switch. So let's head over to the vehicle and I'll show you some of the things to look out for and some of the indications that are giving you the warning signs. Now the first thing that you want to look for is if you get in your vehicle, you always want to listen to hear if you hear the fuel pump priming. And by doing that, when you put your key in and just turn it to power on, you're not starting your car, turn it to power on, you should hear like a little humming noise kind of go for a few seconds. That will let you know that the fuel pump's priming. If you're not hearing that, then you may have a fuel pump that's completely gone, or it could be the relay switch. But here's what it sounds like when it primes. So as we heard there, the fuel pump is priming, so that's a good sign. That's the first step. So we know for a fact that the fuel pump is working properly. Now, if you didn't hear that, that could mean that the fuel pump's completely gone or the relay could be bad. So the next thing we're going to do, let's head underneath the hood, and you'll want to locate the relay for the fuel pump. And then, of course, at that point, you want to make sure that's working properly. If that is working properly and the fuel pump's not working, then there you go right there. The fuel pump needs to be replaced. What you want to do is locate your fuse box and relay compartment here under the hood. Pop that off. These things are held on with these little clips here on each side. Slide that off. And then now you have your fuses and relays. On the inside of the lid, it will tell you what the relays and fuses are. So what you want to do is locate the actual one for your particular vehicle, and it'll tell you which one is the fuel pump relay. In this case, it's this one right here, number 41. So then we would locate it here, and then this is what you're going to be looking at. And at that point, you want to check the relay, make sure it doesn't have any burn marks, any scarring, make sure you have a good connection. If you need to test it, you can do that, and if so, replace it accordingly, put the new one in, and then try priming it again. And if it's only that, then you're good to go. You've only spent a couple bucks, that's it. You want to go right into assuming it's the fuel pump if that's not the case. Now, in the event that the relay's fine and the fuel pump is priming as we heard, the next thing we need to do is put a fuel pressure gauge on the fuel rail, make sure it's getting the right pressure, because just because it's working doesn't mean that it's working properly. So let me show you how to do that. So the next thing here to check fuel pressure, we need to find what's called the Schrader valve, which is basically a little valve, kind of looks like the valve stem on a tire, and it's usually located right on or around the fuel rail. So to get to it on this particular vehicle, we need to remove this air intake here. So we'll take that off, get that out of the way, and it's located right here. I'll get a close-up. Here it is located right here. So we'll go ahead and remove the cap, and I'll show you what it looks like. And that's it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and connect the fuel pressure gauge to it, and we'll see what the fuel pressure looks like. Now, if you want to see more in detail how to check fuel pressure, you can check out, I have two videos. I'm going to have the links down in the description. I'll also have them across the top. But I have one where I show how to check if you do have a Schrader valve, which is the case here, which most cars do have. However, in some of the newer cars, to cut cost, all that stuff, they're doing away with it. So if you don't have a Schrader valve and you need to connect directly into the fuel line, I also have another video, which will be along the top, that shows you how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and connect the gauge to it, and we'll be back to see what the pressure looks like. So we have the fuel pressure gauge attached to the Schrader valve. We're going to go ahead and just prime the fuel pump and see what we're getting. We should be around 55 to 62 for this particular vehicle. So let's see what we're at. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and put the air intake assembly back on. We're going to start the vehicle and then test it at idle, which should also maintain around a 55 to 62 PSI. So let's go ahead and prime it. And we're looking here roughly at about 44 PSI, which is extremely low for this vehicle. Let me get a close-up. That is way too low right there. As mentioned already, it should be around 55 minimum. Just finished putting the air intake assembly back onto the throttle body, mass airflow sensor, that whole duct piece. Let's go ahead and start the car at idle, and let's see what we're looking at. And we are idling here, still roughly around the 44 PSI, which is extremely low. At idle on this vehicle, we should be between 55 and 62. So we should have been up in this area right here, not all the way back here. So this fuel pump, even though it is working, is obviously failing big time, and we're not getting the needed fuel pressure, which is what's causing the issue right here that we're dealing with this rough idle. I don't know if it's actually being conveyed properly here in this video, but standing right here, it's idling very rough. And if we head to the back, we're going to see a lot of exhaust coming out, smoke with a very strong fuel smell. See that? Very strong odor as well, because you don't want to get that confused with just a vapor smoke, which could be a blown head gasket. This is clearly a fuel issue. Random misfires, the poor acceleration, all that. Now, a couple other indications that your fuel pump may be failing or on the way out could be if at high temperatures of running your engine, your car stalls out. Another thing, which is not very common, but in some cases, some minute cases can happen, they could also cause your car to overheat as well. So if you're getting some of the other symptoms and getting an overheating issue, you may also want to check your fuel pump. Now, another easy indication is if you hear a whining noise coming from your fuel tank, as shown here. These are all symptoms in addition to the ones that we've talked about that could be indications that your fuel pump might need to be addressed. Okay, well, this pretty much wraps up this video on how to diagnose a bad or failing fuel pump. As we saw here, we definitely have one that's not completely gone, but it's definitely not performing the way it needs to, so it needs to get out of there. Fuel pressure is about 10 psi below the minimum, so that has to come out. So that's why it's so important to diagnose it properly. In some cases, you do have clear indications, as we saw, the whining noise lets you know that the thing's struggling. In other cases, the performance of the vehicle with the rough idle, or if you're accelerating and you're losing power, or the car is actually getting a kind of a rough idle while you're accelerating, overheating, things like that, those are clear indications. But sometimes it's not even manifesting any of that, and sometimes the car is just not performing properly. And then you want to go through, as we mentioned, first you want to make sure that it's priming. If it's not priming, you want to check the relay switch. If the relay is bad, replace it. That'll solve your problem. That's quick, inexpensive. You're just under the hood, you're done. If the relay is checking out fine and you're still not getting any priming from the fuel pump and the car's not starting, then obviously you need to drop the fuel tank and take care of it at that point. But as we saw with the one that we have here, it is priming properly. The car is starting, but it is having those issues that we saw in this video. And at that case, then we went ahead, we put the fuel pressure gauge on it, and we saw that it is not meeting the required amount for this vehicle. And in that case, it has to come out. So I hope that this video was informative for you. I hope it helped you out maybe with any project you're dealing with a fuel pump issue in your vehicle. Please send me any questions and comments. I would love to hear from you. And as always, I appreciate all the support. So please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.